You know how fairy tales go, right? There's a hero, a villain, and almost always a happily ever after. But what about those magical helpers? The strange characters who show up just in time with a gift? Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain on where they really come from. And trust me, it's a lot weirder and a lot darker than you think.
I mean, seriously, have you ever thought about it? Why doesn't the hero get help from, a friendly local baker? Why does the magic always have to come from a witch who lives in a spooky forest, or a voice from beyond the grave, or an animal that makes some bizarre promise? There is a reason for this, and it's buried deep in some of our oldest, most primal beliefs about how the world works. The clues are hiding in plain sight, right in the stories we grew up with. Cinderella, she gets her magic dress from a tree growing on her dead mother's grave. A Russian hero, Ivan, gets a magical horse from Baba Yaga, the terrifying witch of the forest. In other tales, a tailor gets his big break because he pays for the burial of a dead man, who then comes back as a ghost to help him out. See the theme here? The help is always from another world.
All right, so here's our game plan for unpacking this whole mystery. First, we'll look at the helper's job in the story. Then, we'll get into the core theory of where they come from. After that, we'll trace how this character has changed through history, check out some of its absolute weirdest forms, and then wrap it all up with one incredible piece of ancient evidence that connects everything.
Okay, let's kick things off with the characters we think we know so well. Section 1, the fairy tale helper. Because as you're about to see, these familiar faces have some seriously hidden meanings. It's a classic setup, right? The hero is totally stuck, they've hit a wall, they can't finish the quest by themselves. They need a magic sword, or a horse that can fly, or just some secret knowledge. And then, right on cue, a helper shows up. But here's the thing. This helper is always some kind of gatekeeper. Someone standing right on the border between our world and somewhere else.
So where exactly is that somewhere else? Well, that brings us right to Section 2. A gift from the beyond. This is the core idea that's going to make everything else click into place.
Okay, this next part is the most important insight of all. For centuries, we've been focusing on the wrong thing. We see Baba Yaga and we think, oh, a witch. We see a ghost and we think a spirit. But the real key isn't the character's costume. It's the job they're there to do, their function in the story.
And that job, well, it actually has a name. It's called the donor function. A donor is a character whose one single purpose in the entire plot is to test the hero, and then act as a bridge to transfer some kind of power, an object, a skill, whatever, from the other world to our hero. And yeah, you heard that right. That other world is almost always the land of the dead.
I love this way of thinking about it. The donor is a role in a play that's been going on for thousands of years. The role itself, the function, never ever changes. But the actor playing the part, the costume, gets updated depending on what the audience believes at the time. The bones of the story are so old they outlast the faiths that grew around them. Okay, so let's actually see this in action. For Section 3, we're going to take a trip through time and watch the donor go through a few of these costume changes. You can literally watch these costumes change over time. The oldest form we have is a figure like Baba Yaga, this primal mistress of the forest who comes straight out of hunter-gatherer times. Then, as beliefs shifted to ancestor worship, the donor became a dead parent. And much later, in more modern stories, it became any dead person whose spirit is tied to the hero through a good deed, what folklorists call the Grateful Dead.
So let's drill down on the oldest one, Baba Yaga. She lives in a hut on chicken legs right on the edge of the world. She gives the hero these impossible tasks, and then, and this is the key part, she gives them a magical gift for basically no reason. Her help isn't about being good or bad, it's just part of a ritual. This points straight back to ancient initiation rites, where the goal wasn't to be a good person, but to simply make contact with the spirit world and get its power.
Now, when ancestor worship became the main thing, the donor's costume changed. It was now a dead parent. And this is where it gets really cool, because the function splits. The father donor, who often rises from his grave, usually gives the hero tools of power, a mighty horse, a sword. But the mother donor, she gives tools of wisdom or magical items that need cleverness to use, like that magical doll or Cinderella's dress.
And that brings us to the most modern version of the helper, this character type called the Grateful Dead. Here, the whole logic changes. The hero finds an unburied body and pays for a proper funeral. Because of that, the spirit of the dead person is now in the hero's debt and has to pay them back with magical help. So the magical gift isn't part of a ritual or family thing anymore, it's a straightforward moral transaction.
But the donor doesn't always show up as a full character. Now we get to section 4, where we look at some of the stranger, more broken-down versions of this idea. This is where it gets really weird.
Yep, you heard that right. Sometimes the donor is literally just a talking head. This is an incredibly ancient idea, coming from the belief that the skull held all the life force and knowledge of a person. In old Russian tales, if you find a skull and bury it, you get a magical reward. In Norse mythology, the god Odin literally carries around the severed head of Mimir to get its wisdom. It's the donor function boiled down to its absolute, concentrated essence.
So what about all those talking animals? Well, this quote right here is the key. The hero catches a fox or a fish, and it begs for its life, saying, "Don't eat me, I'll be useful to you later." This is a direct throwback to totemism, an ancient belief that certain animals were the ancestors of a tribe and couldn't be eaten. The grateful animal is just the ancestor donor in a different costume.
And sometimes you get these characters that are just a mashup of everything we've talked about. In Slavic folklore, there's a creature called Copper Forehead or the Forest Marvel. The hero has to capture this wild thing, and in exchange for letting it go, it gives the hero insane power or wealth. It's got the wildness of Baba Yaga, the desperate plea of the grateful animal, and the power of an ancestor all rolled into one.
So, we've seen how the Dionor changes costumes through the ages. Now for our final section, where one stunning piece of ancient evidence is going to connect all these dots.
Okay, so here's the final puzzle, and it's going to sound totally random at first, but stick with me. What on earth could capturing a wild monster from the forest possibly have to do with the most basic act of human civilization? Farming? The answer is everything.
Think about how these stories often begin. A magical creature from the forest, the other world, comes in the night and tramples the crops, the very source of life for the human world. This attack from the wild is what kicks off the whole story. The hero has to go into that other world to confront its power and ultimately to capture the donor and harness that power. And we know this idea, this direct link between taming the wild and making sure your crops grow is ancient, like really ancient. We have proof from the 6th century BC.
This is it, the smoking gun. It's an ancient Greek vase from a place called Eleusis, which was famous for its rituals about farming and harvests. On one side, you see a hero capturing a wild centaur-like creature. On the other side, a man is plowing a field. For ages, people thought they were just two different stories. They're not. They are two halves of the same story. The message is, you must master the wild power of the other world to guarantee the prosperity of your own.
And that right there is the ultimate takeaway. The deep logic of a story can survive for thousands of years, long after the beliefs and rituals that created it have totally disappeared. The donor function remains, like a fossil embedded in our favorite stories. We just forgot why it was there. So the next time you read a fairy tale and some strange character shows up with a gift, ask yourself, who is this really, and what ancient world did they just step out of?